Chapter 422 Huo Yuao's assistance. The entire 6th Reserve Legion fitted themselves out within an hour, and everyone waited on the military drill ground. Even their tents and whatnot had been packed, and everyone was prepared to support the front lines at a moment's notice. Scouts streamed in and out of the army camp continuously, and everyone could tell from their anxious and worried expressions that the battle wasn't going very well. The officers who were at least battalion commanders were quickly called up for a meeting, while Xu Yun brought Huo Yuao and Dalu, who had become her impromptu bodyguards, along with her. Xu Yun had no experience on the battlefield at all, and she was overcome with anxiety and confusion at a time like this. She wasn't just a battalion commander, she was also a princess. This war was connected to her nation's safety and survival, so how could she not be worried? Huo Yuao and Dalu arrived at the corps commander's tent, but they were only bodyguards, so they could only wait outside. Huo Yuao was worried, but he didn't use his spiritual power to sense what was happening inside. If there was a powerful soul master inside, he would be in trouble if that soul master discovered his spiritual undulations. The meeting was strangely very brief, and Xu Yun hurriedly rushed out after less than 10 minutes. Quick, follow me back to the battalion. She quickly got onto her horse as she spoke, and her 2 bodyguards could only jog along as they followed behind her. Yun. Battalion commander, Dalu was about to call her Yuna, but Huo Yuao glared at him, and only then did he recall the method that Huo Yuao had taught him. Dalu hurriedly adjusted his expression, and put on a very serious appearance. Xu Yun snapped around and stared at him. She didn't wait for him to ask, and said straightforwardly, the front lines have been utterly crushed. The Northwestern Field Army has given the order for us to enter the city immediately, and to build our defenses around Imperial Radiant City. We are to wait for the retreating army and rendezvous with them. What? The front lines have been crushed. Dalu blurted out. The Douluo Empire had spent thousands of years developing their defenses at the western borders. They had relied on the Mingdo mountain range as a natural stronghold, and their fortifications could be said to be impenetrable. Xu Yun's pretty face was a little pale. Yes, the front lines have been decimated. The Sun Moon Empire's invasion came without warning, and they detonated several Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells on the relatively weaker regions of the Mingdo mountain range, and created an enormous gap. They mobilized 4 Soul Engineer legions to launch continuous assaults on our army. The Soul Engineer legion's continuous blanketing onslaught forced the Northwestern Field Army back, and led the Sun Moon Empire's great army to charge through the gap in the mountains. 1 Class 9 stationary shell landed in the Northwestern Field Army's central region, and the soldiers on the front lines have sustained heavy losses, with many lives lost and many more injured. We can't hold on any longer, so we're retreating. What about my father? Dalu asked worriedly. Xu Yun answered. Marshal Dai is leading the field army to defend against the invaders with their full strength, but the Sun Moon Empire's assault is very ferocious. Their invading army isn't very large, but they've mobilized 3 out of the 5 fingers of the hand that protects the nation. They've come too quickly and too suddenly, and they're way too destructive. Huo Yuao lowered his voice and asked, Battalion commander, how many soldiers are stationed along our western borders? Xu Yun replied, the Northwestern Field Army is the main defense for our western borders, while the Western Field Army supports them. The Northwestern Field Army controls 11 legions, while the Western Field Army consists of 8 legions. Our fighting strength stands at 80,000 soldiers. Other than that, we have 200,000 auxiliary soldiers, and our total strength is almost 400,000. 7 cities contain reserve legions behind the borders, and our reserve legions have about 200,000 soldiers. Huo Yuao understood the situation as he listened to her. The Douluo Empire's western borders had about 600,000 soldiers stationed there, and of them, there were about 300,000 fighting soldiers. It was a very large number. Furthermore, the 2 field armies stationed at the western borders undoubtedly possessed the greatest fighting strength within the entire military, while they also had the best equipment. In the end, the Sun Moon Empire was the Douluo Empire's greatest enemy. At least the Juga Divine crossbow cannons that the Douluo Empire had purchased from the Tang Sect had been transferred to the western front. Under such circumstances, war had suddenly erupted at the borders, yet the Douluo Empire's defenses were still torn apart. The Douluo Empire's strongest army, the Northwestern Field Army, had been utterly crushed. It wasn't hard to imagine how shocking the Sun Moon Empire's blow was. The 6th Reserve Legion was quickly mobilized, and they swiftly entered Imperial Radiant City, along with their armaments. Intel streamed in continuously back and forth from Imperial Radiant City in the front lines. The city's gates were immediately sealed after the 4th and 6th Reserve Legions entered the city, and everyone was on high alert. Many soldiers were deployed to protect the city's most important granaries and armories. The atmosphere was unprecedentedly tense, and the air was so heavy and dense that it seemed as though it could drip with water. Huo Yuao and the others belonged to the 3rd Battalion of the 6th Reserve Legion, which was part of the 7th Division. They were arranged on the eastern side of the city. They had too many recruits, so if the fighting did reach the city, the western front would be the first place to be assaulted. Therefore, the recruits were deployed near the eastern side of the city. Xu Yun went for another meeting before she returned to her provisional battalion with a gloomy face, while she arranged for Huo Yuao and Dalu to wait inside the room with her. What's the situation, Battalion Commander? Dalu asked worriedly. This matter was closely related to his father's safety, so there was no way he couldn't be anxious. Xu Yun's face was filled with concern and anxiety. The situation is terrible. The number of dead or injured at the front lines is still unclear, but we know that the White Tiger Duke has led his personal soldiers to cover the rear so that most of his army can withdraw from the Sun Moon Empire's range. The front lines have sustained severe losses, while the Western Field Army has been hit with a destructive assault at the same time. The Sun Moon Empire has used another Class 9 stationary soul cannon shell as well. Our conservative estimate is that the Sun Moon Empire has used more than 6 Class 9 stationary cannon shells this time. Huo Yuao drew a cold breath when he heard her words, because he knew how powerful stationary soul cannon shells were. He could understand how frightening their destructive power was. Dalu's face was ghastly pale, but his eyes suddenly became determined and resolute. I'm going to look for my father. I'm leaving. Xu Yun. With that, he turned and began to walk out. Huo Yuao grabbed his shoulder and heartlessly pulled him back. You're not going anywhere. It's useless even if you go. So you're going to stay here and do nothing. Do you think that you, a soul elder that doesn't even have 4 soul rings, can turn the tide even if you go to the front lines? Dalu's eyes were bloodshot. I can't just wait here. My father is fighting with his life for our country's survival. I am his son, and even if I have to die, I will bleed with him and die valiantly on the battlefield. We have enlisted in the army to defend our nation. I am a soul master, so what will I be if I wait here with the recruits? Huo Yuao slapped Dalu right across his face and sent him crumpling to the ground. He said coldly, your intentions are good and you're very brave, but that's brainless bravery. So what if you're a soul master? Do you really think you can get out of the city when the city gates are sealed shut? Or are you intending to expose your identity as the White Tiger Duke's son and embarrass your father at the same time? You should hate yourself because you're not strong enough and can't help him at a time like this. If you have sufficient determination, you should use that on cultivation. Imperial Radiant City is positioned behind the front lines, and once they can't hold on any longer, the army will have to retreat through Imperial Radiant City. Do something you can afford to do with your strength, and is far better and more useful than throwing away your life like that. Perhaps Dalu was used to being beaten by Huo Yuao, but he wasn't furious because of this slap. He got back to his feet, his expression grave and stern, but he said nothing. Xu Yun sat down on a chair by the side. Her eyes were scattered, and she was beside herself with panic. Faced with an all-out war of such a scale, the little princess was completely lost with worry and panic. Huo Yuao glanced at the sky outside. He lowered his voice and said, the 2 of you, stay here and cultivate. I'll take a look at the front lines, and bring first-hand intel back to you guys. You're going. Dalu and Xu Yun stared at him at the same time. Huo Yuao walked up before Dalu, and his cold eyes suddenly became warm. He patted him on the shoulder and said, call me your older brother. Older brother. Dalu called out subconsciously. Huo Yuao smiled faintly and said, stay here and don't go anywhere. I'll come back to look for you very soon. With that, Huo Yuao vanished into thin air soundlessly in front of Dalu. You. Dalu stared at the space in front of him with widened eyes and slack jaw. He didn't feel any soul power undulations from Huo Yuao, and only his martial soul, which had finished its mutation, seemed to feel something. Xu Yun's eyes were equally frozen. Now I firmly believe that he wasn't sent by your father. Why? Dalu, I asked subconsciously. Shu Yan answered, if your father had sent him here, he wouldn't have beat you so cruelly. However, you seem to be a lot stronger than before he beat you up. Yuhao surged into the sky in a flash after he left the army camp. He unleashed his imitation, and his entire being seemed to integrate into the air. His spiritual power spread out in all directions like an enormous web, instantly blanketing the entire city. Yuhao possessed spiritual power that astonished even the beast god, Ditian. Only spiritual power at such a level could possess such prowess. Yuhao couldn't help but shake his head when he made a brief survey of the city. Imperial Radiant City didn't have a single aerial surveillance soul tool, and there were only several soul power detectors on the battlements. Imperial Radiant City's defenses were a far cry from the Sun Moon Empire's Sunrise City back then, the result of the Dalu Empire lagging behind in industrial standards. He didn't know how much longer the Dalu Empire could hold on this time. He continued contemplating as he started to move, transforming into a beam of flowing light and surging towards the west. Yuhao left Imperial Radiant City's borders and put his butterfly wings on, his speed rising exponentially as he infused soul power into his wings. Yuhao quickly saw the defeated soldiers who were retreating from the front lines. They were truly and utterly crushed. Large amounts of soldiers were retreating from the western front with their heads hanging dispiritedly, crestfallen, while many others were injured. Even their formations seemed a little messy and disorganized. How did this happen? Yuhao could tell from his training that the Dalu Empire had very solid foundations, and even their recruits were controlled with strict military discipline. Why were the defeated soldiers so dispirited? Yuhao landed quietly on the ground and merged himself into the defeated army. He was dressed like a normal soldier in the first place, and he discovered from the other soldiers that the Sun Moon Empire's sudden assault was a lot more ferocious than he had imagined. The Dalu Empire's aerial surveillance was simply too weak, to the point where the Sun Moon Empire managed to transport powerful individuals through their western borders in different batches. They assaulted the Dalu Empire in full force, and after their Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells wreaked havoc with their frightening power, these powerful individuals rushed into the army camps that were sent into disarray. They focused on killing officers and creating even more chaos, and they caused the entire Northwestern Field Army to descend into utter chaos and confusion. If not for the White Tiger Duke's strict handling of his soldiers, and the fact that he had formidable prowess at controlling his army, the Northwestern Field Army would have sustained even heavier losses. The front lines had already lost about 70,000 people. According to the defeated soldiers, beams of powerful light rained down from the sky continuously after that terrifying explosion occurred, and decimated the Dalu Empire's stronghold on the mountaintop. Afterward, large numbers of soul engineers flooded into the Mingdo mountain range and massacred everyone. This was clearly a fighting style where top-tier fighting strength was used to open a path. Furthermore, with the Soul Engineer Legion's ability to fly, the Sun Moon Empire's aerial army had an absolute advantage. The Sun Moon Empire had complete air supremacy, and they had used it to great advantage. The Dalu Empire always knew that they were lagging behind the Sun Moon Empire in terms of soul tools, but only after this all-out war had erupted did they understand how big this rift was. Yes, this rift was truly far too big. Yuhao returned to his journey after obtaining that information. He understood that with the frightening power of soul tools, the defense mechanisms in traditional wars of the past were far from enough to withstand the Sun Moon Empire's assault. The Sun Moon Empire had come prepared, and the Dalu Empire was in deep trouble after they lost the Mingdo mountain range, which was their first line of defense. This defeat was likely to be impossible to turn around. Yuhao didn't take long to fly over 200 kilometers. Yuhao could sense intense soul power undulations that were rippling and exploding from a distance. The sky was beginning to darken, and flashes of varying colors that bloomed and flickered continuously on the borders were thus even more obvious. He quickly noticed what had happened to the Mingdo mountain range. There was an enormous gap in the Mingdo mountain range. This gap had a very strange, extremely sinister shape, and was burnt black. It was evidently caused by the frightening explosive force of Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells bombarding the mountains. Yuhao could see from a long distance away that large numbers of soldiers from the Sun Moon Empire were streaming into the Dalu Empire's borders through this gap. The Dalu Empire's defensive perimeter had been utterly crushed on all fronts. But what about the White Tiger Duke and the others? Could it be that the White Tiger Duke and his personal guards had been slaughtered? The remnants of the Dalu Empire's armies were battered and bruised. Voluminous aerial surveillance and land surveillance soul tools dotted the sky roughly 10 kilometers away, while soul tool fronts and positions constructed by soul engineers were gradually taking shape on the ground. Brilliant flashes that flickered from time to time slowly disappeared at the same time. The Northwestern Field Army's front had been completely lost after just half a day. Yuhao gulped as he hovered in midair. Even he was a little lost. That was the Dalu Empire's most formidable fighting strength. Were they actually crushed that simply? Yuhao couldn't tell which soul engineer legions were stationed beneath him, and he closed his eyes as he withdrew every inch of spiritual power that he had let out. He was under the cover of imitation, and even aerial surveillance soul tools couldn't detect his presence. Only thermal detectors could possibly discover his presence. A rose gold vertical light gradually surfaced behind Yuhao's back, and his head glowed at the same time as a rose gold will of light appeared behind his head. The aura of destiny undulated outward at the same time. His spiritual detection's range was ultimately limited, and his spiritual power wasn't as powerful as that of the evil eye Tyrant King, who could reach 500 kilometers away with spiritual detection. When Yuhao's spiritual detection reached a range of 10,000 meters, his accuracy would be greatly reduced. Furthermore, the battlefield at the border was so large, it was clearly impossible for him to find the White Tiger Duke with spiritual detection. Therefore, he opted for another method. He wanted to try a method that he felt he could have used a long time ago, but had never tried before. He wanted to try to use destiny to guide him. This wasn't a soul skill. Yuhao possessed the power of destiny, and he was using his heart to feel, sensing for palpitations that stemmed from destiny. The vertical eye behind Yuhao was withdrawn after a moment, and his eyes turned towards the north. Something in the dark was guiding him, but the White Tiger Duke should be to the north. He turned around and sped up once again, racing towards the north. The Northwestern Field Army was not just stationed at the western borders. They were also near the Heavenly Soul Empire at the same time. They could reach the Heavenly Soul Empire's borders if they traveled less than 500 kilometers north from their position. The White Tiger Duke was actually taking what was left of his forces and retreating towards the north. Why was he doing that? Yuhao flew forward rapidly with some doubts in mind. His thoughts were slowly ironed out, and his expression immediately grew ugly. However, traces of admiration tinged his eyes. The White Tiger Duke didn't retreat toward the east, but toward the north. There could only be one reason for that. The White Tiger Duke was one of the main targets for the Sun Moon Empire's sudden onslaught. The Sun Moon Empire would attempt to take him down at all costs, so their most formidable fighting strength should have been directed at him. He retreated to the north to draw this force away to give the Dalu Empire's defeated armies time to retreat. The Sun Moon Empire's soul engineer legions were still flying through the air, and the threat and damage they could cause to normal soldiers were far too heavy and severe. Even though the hatred that Yuhao felt towards the White Tiger Duke wasn't reduced by much, he still admired the White Tiger Duke's bravery and heroism. He was a marshal, but he wasn't the first to retreat, and he placed himself in grave danger so that he could buy time for his armies to retreat. This deed wasn't something that normal people could perform. Yuhao released his spiritual power at the same time as he continued flying towards the north. Indeed, there were many scars and traces of battle left behind on the ground. Some were left behind by soul tools, and others were left behind by soul masters in the armies. Yuhao saw corpses from time to time, and he could tell from these traces that the battle was violent and vigorous, but there weren't that many people fighting. The total number couldn't be more than 10,000 people, but this group had to be the most elite members from both sides. The Dalu Empire had few soul engineers and soul tools, but their numbers of true soul masters wasn't something the Sun Moon Empire could compare to. There was at least one soul master legion in the Northwestern Field Army, with at least 1,000 people that consisted entirely of true soul masters. Even though they weren't the White Tiger's personal guards, they only listened to the White Tiger Duke's orders and commands. The Dalu Empire had a total of 10 such soul master legions. Unfortunately, these soul master legions were far too powerful, to the point where the Dalu Empire's royal family didn't dare hand them over to the White Tiger Duke for him to command. The entire Northwestern Field Army had only been assigned one such soul master legion. Yuhao couldn't fly that quickly because he was surveying the traces of battle on the ground, but the good thing was that he knew he was going in the right direction. The further he flew, the more he understood how much the Sun Moon Empire wanted to kill the White Tiger Duke. Yuhao could tell from the corpses on the ground that there were at least two soul engineer legions chasing down the White Tiger Duke and his soldiers. Furthermore, these two legions were members of the hand that protects the nation. Yuhao had seen one of them before. That legion had trapped Yuhao and the others, which had ultimately resulted in Wang Qiu sacrificing herself for him. That legion was the evil Tyrant Legion, and from what the soul engineers who had been killed were wearing, the other legion should be the Terraclaw Soul Engineer Legion. These two legions had top-tier equipment. They were beast-ranked soul Soul Engineer legions. They were equipped with large amounts of top-tier soul tools, and their average fighting strength was equal to that of a Class 4 Soul Engineer or higher. Furthermore, they were exceptionally adept at teamwork and cooperation. Yuhao flew for another hour before he could faintly see waves of flickering light in the distance. These lights were flickering at an incredible rate. It wasn't hard to see that the battle was extremely intense. Yuhao found the right direction, so he no longer had to determine his destination. He hurriedly accelerated as much as he could and flew in that direction. He could see shadows and figures flickering with beams of light in the air over the horizon. This group was mainly split into two groups. The first group belonged to the evil Tyrant Soul Engineer Legion, whose flying type soul tools sparkled with blue light, and the other group belonged to the Terraclaw Soul Engineer Legion, whose flying type soul tools flickered with dark golden light. These two Soul Engineer Legions were spread out in midair, and were maintaining their Soul Engineer front in the air just like that. A blue dome protected the evil Tyrant Legion, while a dark gold dome protected the Terraclaw Legion. Yuhao could see that the soul power from these domes came from a spike-shaped soul tool at the tips of their flying type soul tools. Everyone was releasing soul power from this soul tool, and the soul power congregated and transformed into these enormous domes. The ratio of corpses that Yuhao saw on the way here was heavily in favor of Soul Engineers. There were far too few Soul Engineers who had perished, but number stood at a little over 10, while the Douluo Empire had left behind far too many corpses. The White Tiger Duke's personal guards had suffered heavy losses and injuries, and many individuals who should be powerful soul masters were killed in action. The two Soul Engineer Legions that were hovering in midair were firing thick soul rays towards the ground. Again and again, they weren't firing among themselves or at their own discretion. The soul tools they were using seemed to have a combined effect. 3 of 5 people formed one team, and every soul ray they fired would cause intense explosions on the ground beneath them. The situation on the ground was far more tragic and disastrous compared to the Soul Engineers. Yuhao possessed necromantic abilities, and as he reached out with his spiritual power, he could already feel many spiritual undulations on the ground. Those spirits belonged to the dead. Compared to the two distinct domes in the sky, there were also domes on the ground, and they were also used for defense, but they could only be described as multicolored. There were almost 100 different kinds of light, and the situation seemed very scattered and disorganized. It was clear that the Soul Masters were the main defensive force on the ground. The White Tiger Duke's personal guards couldn't do much in a battle at this level, and most of those who died on the ground consisted of the White Tiger Duke's personal guards. There were 7 or 8 people hovering amongst the two Soul Engineer Legions in the sky. These people didn't unleash any attacks, and were just watching the battlefield coldly. They were inside the protective barriers, but Yuhao could still feel how powerful and frightening these people were. Yuhao had seen 3 of them before. They were judges for the Radiant City Elite Soul Engineer Tournament in the Sun Moon Empire's Radiant City, and the person he was most familiar with was this group's leader. Wasn't he the Starsky Douluo, Yuhao, who had given him the Sun Moon Divine Needle back then? At this moment, a Class 9 Sun Moon Divine Needle was hovering above his head. Furthermore, there wasn't just one. There were 2. Yuhao didn't have to ask to faintly guess that the Starsky Douluo's appearance here probably had something to do with the Sun Moon Divine Needle that he had given the White Tiger Duke back then. At this moment, one of the 2 Sun Moon Divine Needles above his head was likely to be the one that Yuhao had given Yuhao back then. These formidable individuals, who were some of the strongest Soul Engineers in the Sun Moon Empire, were undoubtedly holding down the fort here so that they could eradicate whatever resistance there was on the ground. Yuhao took a deep breath and calmed and steadied himself as much as he could. Even though he was far stronger than he was last time, his strength was still far too small and weak on a battlefield such as this. Yuhao was the only finished product from the Ultimate Soldier plan, and he knew that he had to use every possible resource he could to turn the fight around. And those resources didn't just comprise strength and abilities. Yuhao lowered his altitude and moved his spiritual power towards the Douluo Empire soldiers. Right now, he wasn't even sure if the White Tiger Duke was still alive. The situation quickly became clear. The Douluo Empire had less than 2,000 soldiers left. The White Tiger Duke's personal guards made up about 13 to 1,400 of these 2,000 soldiers, and they relied on about 5 to 600 soul masters defending with their full strength to barely maintain the current situation. None of these soul masters were weak, and some had stronger soul power than the 2 Soul Engineer Legions in the sky. Their soul rings sparkled on their bodies, and even the weakest of them had 5 soul rings. The Douluo Empire's royal family still strongly supported the Northwestern Field Army. This Soul Master Legion comprised the best of the best soul masters in the Douluo Empire. Even though they had lost quite a few people, they were the reason why the White Tiger Duke could still hold back the Sun Moon Empire's Soul Engineer Legions so that the Northwestern Field Army could retreat. However, these Soul Masters' faces were filled with fatigue, and everyone wore solemn and grave expressions. None of them would be afraid of the Soul Engineers in the sky if they were one against one, and there were even 4 titled Douluo among these Soul Masters. The White Tiger Duke was still among this group, but he seemed like he was in a bad state. Half his body was scorched black, and he was supporting himself with the Yardlaw knife as he commanded the battle. He had sustained severe injuries. The other 3 titled Douluo spread out and continuously cooperated with other Soul Masters to defend the group. They seemed like they had expended a lot of their soul power as well. The White Tiger Duke was panting with heavy breaths. His eyes were still as resolute as ever, but they were already flowing with determination and a grim resignation to fate. He had been suppressed on this hill for almost 2 hours, and reinforcements couldn't possibly come for them, no matter what happened. Even though the Sun Moon Empire's army had ended the Mingdo mountain range, the White Tiger Duke and his army would probably be eliminated today if he didn't make a decision soon. Yuhao lowered his voice and growled, "Invite the big dipper Douluo here." Yuhao's eldest son was standing beside him. Yuhao, who had graduated from Shrek Academy. 5 years had gone by, and Yuhao was now a powerful 7-ring soul sage. He was just 25 years old, and he was definitely considered an elite among the younger generation. He could represent Shrek Academy in battle as their vice team leader back then, which sufficiently displayed his talent. Yes. Yuhao acknowledged, and he quickly called an elderly man who was in his 70s over to Yuhao. This man was one of the 3 powerful titled Douluo in the Soul Masters formation. This elderly man came beside Yuhao, and suddenly arched his eyebrows as he pointed towards the sky with his right hand. A silver white beam of light surged into the sky, and this light beam webbed out as it transformed into an enormous umbrella more than 50 meters in diameter. This umbrella blocked the soul rays and whatnot that were raining from the sky, and some of these attacks even included attacks from Class 8 Soul Engineers. These soul rays and soul cannons didn't just land on the umbrella surface. These attacks seemed like they were immediately dispelled when they touched the silver white radiance on the umbrella surface, and they were passed and consumed by countless thin and fine spaces in the air. Therefore, no explosions rang out. This elderly man was the commander of the Douluo Empire's first Soul Master Legion, the Big Dipper Douluo, Sunji. He was one of the titled Douluo who belonged to the older generation within the Douluo Empire, and his real name had long been forgotten, so he had always been called Sunji. His soul power stood at rank 94, and his martial soul was a Big Dipper umbrella. He was very good friends with the last generation's White Tiger Duke, and 1 generation older than Yuhao. The previous generation's White Tiger Duke had pleaded with him to protect the White Tiger lineage, and he was one of the strongest forces in the White Tiger Duke's camp. Duke. The Big Dipper Douluo's face looked a little pale as he blocked the attacks that rained down from the sky. His expression was also extremely grave at this moment. The Sun Moon Empire had clearly planned and schemed their sudden ambush for a long time, and the ferocity of their assault exceeded everyone's expectations. The Sun Moon Empire didn't send their forces swiftly into the Douluo Empire. Instead, they sent their strongest fighting strength against the White Tiger Duke, Yuhao, which clearly meant that they had planned this. The White Tiger Duke was the Northwestern Field Army's marshal, and he was also the mainstay for the Douluo Empire's western defense perimeter. Once he died, the Northwestern and the Western Field Armies would be dealt an unprecedentedly large psychological blow. This result would be exceptionally beneficial for what the Sun Moon Empire wanted to do next. Furthermore, Yuhao wasn't the invaders' only target. They were also going after the Douluo Empire's first Soul Master Legion, because this legion represented 10% of the Soul Masters that the royal family controlled. Soul Masters were inferior to Soul Engineers on the battlefield if legion fought against legion, but if these Soul Masters were used or deployed in another fashion, their impact and force would be comparable to that of a Soul Engineer Legion. The first Soul Master Legion was also the strongest legion overall amongst the Douluo Empire's 10 great Soul Master Legions. From the sudden bombardment from those Class 9 stationary soul cannons until now, the first Soul Master Legion had lost about 1/3 of their Soul Masters. This painful price was paid in exchange for an opportunity for the remnants of the Northwestern Field Army to retreat. The Big Dipper Douluo had requested the White Tiger Duke to lead his army and retreat a long time ago, but Yuhao had insisted otherwise. He led his personal guards to cover the rear, and worked together with the Big Dipper Douluo's first Soul Master Legion to do so. If he hadn't done that, the first Soul Master Legion would probably have been destroyed by now. However, if their current circumstances were allowed to persist, they would still be unable to escape their fate of eradication and complete defeat. Duke. The big dipper Douluo came beside the White Tiger Duke, and heaved a faint sigh when he saw the wounds all over Daihao's body. The White Tiger Duke's most severe injury came from the Starsky Douluo's Sun Moon Divine Needle. Initially, the White Tiger Duke had a Sun Moon Divine Needle of his own, but the Starsky Douluo took his Sun Moon Divine Needle away as soon as he appeared, and even used this Sun Moon Divine Needle to heavily wound Daihao. If the White Tiger Duke hadn't had several defensive soul tools on his body, and if not for the fact that his martial soul was powerful, he would probably have died from that hit. Daihao raised his hand, and a layer of white light was released from his hand. This white light encompassed himself and the big dipper Douluo within it. Daihao's eyes were still as bright as ever. He clenched his fists tightly and said, Uncle Sonji, we can't continue on like this. We can't escape our fate of losing every single soldier if this goes on. The big dipper Douluo stared at him and said, what are your plans? Daihao lowered his voice and said, I am their target. After a while, I will order my personal guards to charge out and scatter in all directions to create an illusion that I want to charge out. I will run by myself towards the north to attract the enemy's attention. You will take the first Soul Master Legion and break through towards the southeast. Run as far as you can, and preserve as much life and strength as possible. Preserve your strength so that we can retaliate in the future. No, the big dipper Douluo's expression changed drastically as he retorted angrily. What nonsense are you spouting? Your father has given me the task of protecting the White Tiger's lineage. How can I just leave you behind and run away? If I did that, how could I face your father in the afterlife? Daihao said calmly, Uncle Sonji, now is not the time to talk about sentiments. My decision is for my empire's future. It's meaningless if everyone dies in battle here today. And right now, there's no way we can deal any conceivable or effective damage to those fellows in the sky. Their collective defensive soul tool formation is too powerful, and even transcendent Douluo probably couldn't break through. You have to go, and you'll take Yuhao away. He will take over as the White Tiger Duke after my death. Time is of the essence, Uncle Sonji, so you must listen to me. Only I will remain to draw their attention and create an opportunity for you guys to survive. It won't be that easy for them to kill me either, and I will try my best to survive as long as a chance exists. We can't unleash our full strength if we stay together. The big dipper Douluo's chest puffed heavily in and out. He understood in his heart that the White Tiger Duke's solution was the best one for now, but how could he abandon Daihao when he had watched Daihao grow up since he was a child? Uncle Sonji, please make a move while everyone still has soul power. The plan has been decided, and I will be at ease handing Yuhao over to you. He dispelled the soundproofing barrier that he had just released as he spoke. He turned to Dai Yuhao beside as he lowered his voice and said, you will follow Grandpa Sonji, and we will break out in two different groups. You will listen to Grandpa Sonji's orders after breaking out. Do you understand? Dai Yuhao hesitated for a moment and asked, what about you, father? Daihao muttered coldly, I will break out from another direction. Only in this way will we have a higher chance of breaking out. Go. It's up to you now, Uncle Sonji. The big dipper Douluo heaved a long sigh as he stared at the deep determination and resolve in Daihao's eyes. He grabbed Dai Yuhao as he turned and left. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.